My name is Leslie Billy. I'm the Chief Executive of Viewpoint, which is a service user-led organisation. I'm a member of the Hertfordshire Strategic Co-Production Board. On the agenda, we heard from our co-production standard subgroups. One of the subgroups we have is around training and developing a set of co-production standards for the county to be used both by the County Council and by the providers that they commission. We had an update from Ian McBeath on some big ideas around the budget for the next 4 to 5 years, and he laid out a number of themes for older people, young people and wider working age adults that we will, as a board, be looking at to help shape for the future. The first big idea was around older people, looking at how we can connect people in the community and how we can reduce the issue around loneliness for older people. Second, it was about how we could enable older people to get their independence back within the community. The third big idea is how we can encourage housing providers to develop more flexi-care accommodation, as well as care homes. So we have an innovative package of housing accommodation for older people. He then laid out some big ideas for younger people that we were able to discuss. One of the ideas was looking at how we encourage more younger people with disabilities to get into employment. What support do we need to have in place? What framework do we have to have in place for them to get into work and then to retain their work? Second was around accommodation for young people. And third, how we could bring more people that are currently being cared outside of Hertfordshire back into Hertfordshire to be cared for. The board looking at people with a lived experience were involved from the very beginning of this process, and in fact one of the tenets of the co-production board is the whole notion of the user voice being pivotal and important in shaping and influencing the future direction of the board. And so it's heartening for me to hear that and for the board to be quite positive around that. There was a discussion with Dr. Mervyn Eastman on loneliness. We talked about the evidence of how we can address this in communities and challenge our preconceived views of what might be the solutions. And he did mention men's sheds, which I believe is a self-organised, self-supporting groups for men and women. And in fact, I think I found one near me, so I'll be joining that after this film. Following on from Dr. Mervyn Eastman's presentation, the board have agreed to take that forward in the form of a project. At the next meeting, we will be talking about the 15-year plan and looking at the Aging Well strategy.
Hello, I was invited to Co-Production Board today to discuss the Inclusive Hertfordshire project. Just to give a flavour of some of the things we've discussed. We talked about practical things we've done to take this forward, and one of which is a toolkit for employers, which is aimed to raise awareness about employing disabled people, people with health conditions, and the real benefits employers can get from that. Another example is the work our libraries have been doing on becoming autism-friendly libraries. They've been doing some fantastic work, and of course, by making themselves friendly places for people with autism, it's applicable to other groups and people as well. I also spoke a bit about the I Can Make It project, which is about how we can use our contracting processes to encourage businesses and people who do business with us to recruit young disabled people to close the disability employment gap. And one of the things we'll be doing is targeting International Day for People with Disabilities in December with some dedicated comms around this to really push out these messages and promote the work and help Hertfordshire become a more inclusive place.
My name is Mervyn Eastman and I am Director and Founder of Change Agents Cooperative, and it was really a pleasure to be invited to Hertfordshire's Co-Production Board. And I was particularly asked to explore and talk about loneliness, not just in terms of older people, but across the generations. And the key takeaways, I suppose, from that was about being clear what we mean by loneliness, to be careful not to victimise people of whatever generation who are experiencing loneliness, and to really break away from some of the patronising and paternalistic responses that exist, not necessarily in Hertfordshire, but more generally in our response to loneliness. I think the other second point I wanted to raise was that we need to be always starting with the individual and their experience. So whilst the board and professionals can understand loneliness in broad terms, the individual who understands loneliness is the individual themselves, and we need to be engaging in far more creative ways around accessing and hearing. Often professionals listen but they don't hear. The other point I would make is that any response to loneliness has to be local, and it has to be of the community, not necessarily in the community but of it, which therefore means the community needs to be involved and engaged in co-producing and scoping and even running, I would say, any response that community is looking at to address loneliness. And I suppose the last point I'd want to make is we've professionalised loneliness. Therefore, we need to get back to, again, starting where the individual is at. I don't like the notion of users. I don't like the notion of clients. People are members of a community, or they can be members of a group, but it's about their owning that and responding to that and taking their own initiatives as well.